So I'm going to be talking about the controversy surrounding the fan English translation of the video game Princess Crown, which was originally released for the Sega Saturn. So this fan translation has been in development for over a decade, since 2013, maybe even 2012. And it has finally been finished. However, it was not finished by the original guys who worked on this project. And instead, it was not completed, but it was released in a form by someone else. And I'm going to go over all the details, a little bit of the backstory, and I'm going to tell you what's really going on here and why there's a controversy. So it's a lot to take in, but I'm going to try to do my best to explain it coherently with a lot of clarity. So I have some notes here, and this kind of gives you like an overview of, what's going on. So we have at the top two guys, CyberWarriorX and Sam I Am. So these are the two guys who originally worked on the Princess Crown fan translation, translating it into English. So these are the main two guys. So whenever we're talking about that, we're talking about these two people. And CyberWarriorX is a coder, and Sam I Am is a translator. That's kind of important, which I'll get into in a second. So I have the timeline there, and then there's some outstanding questions. So it'll kind of make sense as we go along. So here we have this article, which is rejoicing. Just yesterday, Princess Crown finally playable in English. When I saw this, I was really excited. I couldn't believe finally it was finished. But I wasn't surprised to learn that it was not finished by those two guys, CyberWarriorX and Sam I Am. Instead, it was finished by a good Samaritan, let's say. His name is, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Aid Master, EAD Master. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry. Um, so this normally would have been a joyous occasion, but it was not a joyous occasion for the original dudes, the two dudes that we're talking about here. CyberWarriorX and Sam I Am, the coder and the translator. So they've been making a beef. They've been making a beef. And I'm going to show you a little bit. I'm not going to go through all the beef because you can look at that stuff on your own. This is CyberWarriorX's Twitter. And as you can see here, it says dev for Polymega. Now that's going to become important later. So just keep that in mind for now. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that has been said, because he says some very unflattering things. So this is him. Remember, this is CyberWarriorX. As you can see, he's saying here, hey, project hasn't been abandoned here. Why are you using my code? He's responding to the original release, press release, I guess, of, hey, we got this English translation of Princess Crown finally after over a decade, and CyberWarriorX is whining and complaining. He's saying over here, posting that really old beta build is making people happy, huh? So he's obviously not happy. And I'm going to tell you why he's not happy in just a second. So let's see what else we got. So on this forum here, CyberWarriorX is bitching and complaining even more. So he's saying on this forum, I don't recall ever saying I had abandoned it. I also don't recall having any obligation to sharing Sam's or my work. How about you do your own work instead of stealing others? Imagine stealing other people's work. Not cool, guys. Now, remember, this guy had taken over a decade. It started out in 2013 or so, so at least 11 years. They've been working on this project for over 11 years. And now he's so angry and irate that someone else finally released something in an unfinished state, an alpha state, but at least it's something that can be worked on and iterated on and finally finished. Why is he so mad? Gotta wait and find out. But let's look at more of the dumb things he's saying. And by the way, this is also why I stopped releasing the source code to the public, precisely because of this. He doesn't say why at all. But you'll notice this one guy, this degenerate Trekkies Unite, you're going to hear more from this loser later on. He's saying license was changed. So he's trying to do his whole wah wah. You didn't have permission to finish the project that took me over 11 years to do, and I still haven't finished it, and I'm going to explain to you why. It was deliberate. Okay, in fact, you've seen enough of his bitching and whining, right? So how do we make sense of all of this? Why is he so irate? First of all, why didn't he finish it? And why is he so irate that it's released now? Well, in order to understand this, we have to go back to 2022. So let's take a look at the notes again. Let's look at the timeline. So 2012 to 2013, translation project started. Now the project was posted on GitHub under GPL, which I believe stands for General Public License. And they were at the time looking for help. And from what I understand, they didn't get any help during this time period between like 2013 and 2022. They didn't get much help. Now, Daniel Thomas McInnes. Let's take a look. Now, who is this guy? Daniel Thomas McInnes. He says a short update on Princess Crown. And he posted this in January 2022. The English translation is stuck in limbo owing to personal legal issues in the author's personal life. This will likely not be completed unless other parties step in or begin a new translation from scratch. Sorry. Now, this is weird. Like, I saw this back in the day, too, and I was like, what the hell? Who is this guy? And how does he know anything about this? What is he talking about? Well, what he's talking about is this. Now, a little bit of this is going to be cut off, but I'll just tell you what it says. So basically, CyberWarriorX, let's go back to the notes. So CyberWarriorX was having some legal problems. His father had passed away a few years prior to 2022. So that technically wasn't anything new, but he did have a personal tragedy in his life. I think maybe it happened in 2017, actually. But the issue was there was some problem with his father's estate. And so he was having some legal battle involving that. And guess what? Legal battles require expensive lawyers. That's going to become really important. So that's what this guy's talking about. That's what Daniel Thomas McInnes is talking about. This is the guy who first broke that story. Now, he says here it's stuck in limbo, implying that the project was canceled. Now, in all fairness, CyberWarriorX went on to lots of forums and things like this forum. Again, part of it's going to be cut off, but just bear with me. So he went on this forum, and he wanted to clarify, if I can find it. So here's Sam I Am. You can see that, right? The first one. So it's saying, so it's referencing the tweet and then asking, is there any truth to this? Sam I Am says no. And then at the scrolling down here, again, it's a little cut off for the name, but you can see what he says. It says, sorry for the radio silence on my end. Just to clarify so it doesn't get any wings, the story seems to originate from NeoGAF, where it seems they misunderstood an earlier post dealing with the aftermath of my father's passing from a few years ago as a current affair. GitHub project was an old build that I haven't updated in a long time since I've been using a private repository for a while now. So I decided there was no real point in keeping it up. The current holdup is blah, blah, blah. He's not telling the whole truth. He's trying to clarify that the project is still in the works, which is true, sort of. what he's not telling the truth about is that he actually did have legal problems going on at the time, and he also had money problems because he needed to pay for those lawyers. Let's take a look at this. Okay. So as you can see, we have some very interesting things on this Discord server. So now, who was Daniel Thomas McInnes? Huh. So here we find out who he is. Daniel Thomas McInnes wrote for Shiro. What's Shiro? Well, this is Shiro. This website. This website. You see? Citations Shiro. It's a Sega-based website. So this guy, Daniel Thomas McInnes, was a writer. He used to write for this website, Segatashan Shiro. So evidently, yeah, he's credible. He knows a little bit of what he's talking about here. That's who that guy is. And how do we know that? Because this guy, Patrick, he's an admin. So this is the Discord for that website. And he's confirming who this guy is. It's a writer for Shiro. So what he's saying is credible. So I just think that's kind of interesting here because these guys, they were all trying to discredit what this guy was saying. So here, he's talking about trying to verify it, I could be mistaken. There's actually reasons why he's trying to be a little coy now. So people are saying, oh, is he trying to talk out of his ass? That's clout chasing. And then the admin clarifies, no, the dude wrote for our website. And then this guy's like, oh, geez. Then Trekkies Unite, who's the biggest piece of shit ever, tries to downplay everything, saying, that's fine. I just want to know where you got this from. Now here's something very interesting. CyberWarriorX removed the GitHub for PC. So what he's saying is that CyberWarriorX, let's go back to the notes, this guy, the main dev, the main coder, pulled the project from GitHub. So let's go to the timeline. Daniel Thomas McInnes reveals that CyberWarriorX has legal problems. What are the legal problems? Some kind of dispute involving his father's estate. He now has money problems. CyberWarriorX has money problems because he has to pay for lawyers. At around the same time period, the project was pulled from GitHub, and it is now under proprietary license, all rights reserved. That's the thing. That's the very important thing there. Now, all of a sudden, before he was looking for help. Now, all of a sudden, when he pulls the project from GitHub, he no longer wants any help. He goes radio silent and doesn't talk to anyone. Isn't that conspicuous? However, I need to point out, and this is really important for EAD Master, all work prior is still under GPL, General Public License. Changing the license at this point is not retroactive. And this was around this time that Samiam joins the Segatasan Shiro Discord. And I'm going to show you that right now, when that exactly happened. So Samiam. So who's Samiam? Okay, let's see. Okay, so you can see it here. So this is when Samiam first joined Segatasan Shiro's Discord. That happened in February 2022. Now, Sam I Am is the second guy involved in this project, right? He's the guy who worked on the translation. Now, it's important to point out all the translation work was finished around 2014. So this is 2022. Hmm. So he joined the Discord around this time. And he joined the Discord to do what? Well, that's the interesting thing. Take a look over here. So you can see over here he joined. This is the first time. And then the second post he ever made was just yesterday as of the making of this video, which is October 27th, 2024. So in this entire time, he joined here. And look, people are all like confused about what's going on. What is it canceled? What's going on? We're so confused. Blah 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 blah. This comment's going to be kind of cute in a second. All right, I'll tell you what's going on. So Sam I Am joined in 2022 and didn't say anything. He showed up and doesn't say anything for a whole 2 years. Well, actually, he did say stuff. It's just you can't see it publicly. Sam I Am was DMing all the admins, the moderators, any interested parties, and telling them what was really going on. And here's what was really going on. CyberWarriorX had some money problems because he had to pay for lawyers due to this legal issue with his father's estate. So he licensed out the code for the fan translation of Princess Crown. He licensed it out to someone, probably Polymega. Now remember what I talked about before. We know that he worked for Polymega, or he currently works for Polymega. It's right there, dev for Polymega. So it's probably Polymega, but it's vaguely possible it could have been someone else. But he licensed it out to someone, and they paid him money to do this. So that's what was really going on. He was being paid to switch it to it went from open general public license GPO to a proprietary license, and he licensed out the code to someone else, probably Polymega. And Sam I Am had been informing these Citations people. He was DMing them and letting them know what was going on, but he wasn't telling people publicly. He was saying to people privately, look, he's having money problems. He needs to license out the code to get money. He needs to pay for these lawyers, blah, blah, blah. So that's what's really going on. So by this time, this guy knows what's going on. It's saying here, so he's quoting something from that NeoGAF article. And it's saying, my advice would be for members of the Sega fan translation community to reach out to CyberWarriorX and Sam I Am and see if they're in need of any assistance. And this guy is saying, something tells me that's the last thing they want. And why is that the last thing they want? Is because they're no longer open license. It's no longer open source. They're now being paid money to develop it in a closed kind of thing. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is that these two idiots, CyberWarriorX and Sam I Am, have been playing us this entire time. They were indeed working on this project, but they were not going to release it until some point in which the guys that they were working for were ready to release it. So more than likely, Polymega, this company, I guess they make like, these consoles that they're like emulation consoles, right? And like one of the things that they can emulate is the Sega Saturn. They likely were kind of doing some kind of deal with CyberWarriorX, and they wanted this fan translation, this English translation, to be released alongside this Polymega thing to help sell the systems. Like it was a money thing, financial incentive, and that's the reason. That's the reason why, by the way, that's the reason why Cyber Warrior X was so pissed off about this project being released without his permission, and why he was bitching and complaining about it. And he was yelling at the guy who, finally took the initiative and did the right thing and actually worked on it and released a version of it. EAD Master. Cyber Warrior X is just blasting him, yelling, screaming. This guy was not saying a word for years, not responding to anyone, and being an asshole. Then all of a sudden, when someone actually takes the initiative and releases the work in a state where it can be iterated on and worked on, Cyber Warrior X suddenly comes out of nowhere, out of his little hole, and starts bitching and complaining. Why? Because he didn't want the competition. Okay. Now, normally, if someone switches to a proprietary license, there'll be an open source fork of it. That's the that's the good faith thing to do. Okay. The only reason why you wouldn't want that to happen is if you're getting money for it. Okay. And why did he need money? Because he had money problems. He had to pay for these lawyers over that estate thing. Now, look, I want to make it clear. Like, I'm not unsympathetic. Like, I actually feel bad for him. I actually feel bad for Cyber Warrior X because, losing a father, I mean, that's got to be heartbreaking. I can't imagine that was easy. And then going through these legal problems with the estate and whatnot, I'm sure it was a big headache for him. And I'm not unsympathetic to the fact that he had money problems. Okay, fine, you had money problems. My issue is how he wasn't being honest about it. Okay, there was no transparency, and he didn't say to people, look, this is what's going on, and this is what I need to do. It is unethical to lie to people by omission. Okay, when you don't say things that's really going on behind the scenes, but there's all this like nonsense going on with money issues and whatnot. That's not right. And especially for this project that was going to be released for free, and like and he was people were thinking that he was working on it and it was going to release it when it was finished, but that's not the case. Okay, he was holding on to it and deliberately not finishing it because it was to coincide with this polymega thing. Okay, that's my issue. It's the lies, it's the lying by omission, and it's not just Cyber Warrior X, it was also these other idiots on that Discord. you know all of these morons. If we fast forward to the future here, I'll just give you an example. He's saying here, this is the crap I've been talking about. This kind of crap has been brewing for years. These same arguments have been flung at Cyber Warrior X and Sam I Am for years now. Anyone like myself who said anything that went against that mob was called a gatekeeper. So this is some of the nonsense that this degenerate has been spouting. Um, so he knew about the money problems that Cyber Warrior X has been having, and he's gaslighting everyone. He was gaslighting everyone and talking nonsense. He was trying to tell people you're entitled. You have no right to tell him to release the work in an unfinished state when it had nothing to do with any of that. It had nothing to do with any of that. It had to do with the fact that CyberWarriorX had this financial uh, thing going on with probably Polymega, but it could have been someone else. It doesn't really matter. Um, and that was what was really going on. And SamIM has also been a gaslighting liar. Like if you take a look at what we have here, he's saying, I'd like to address a few things about this Princess Crown translation. CyberWarrior X and I did not sign off on this. As far as I know, no attempt to contact us was made. Of course, he didn't attempt to contact you because you weren't talking to anyone. You weren't willing to work with anyone else because you were getting paid to finish this contract for Polymega. And I believe that even if we had been contacted, we would not have chosen to give permission. Yeah, no shit. The code and the script that this person used as a base were both wildly obsolete. Yeah, because that's the only thing he could work with. Okay, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you kind of get the idea of how badly these two are coming off. You know, ostensibly they have sour grapes, but it's far more insidious than that when you realize that they were not working on this project. They were not finishing it, rather, because of this financial incentive that was going on behind the scenes that they were not disclosing. That's the problem. It was not transparent. You know, I think people could have been sympathetic. I think if CyberWarriorX had been transparent about it, he could have done a Kickstarter or not whatever they call it, GoFundMe. He could have done a GoFundMe and said, "Look, guys, you know, I'm having trouble. You know, if you can find it in your heart to throw a couple of bucks my way, it would be a big help." And I think no one would have had a problem with that. And you could have released the fan translation years ago, and everyone would be happy. But now no one's happy except me because this fan translation is finally coming out and it's going to be done and it's going to be finished without these two idiots. All right, so 2024, the alpha version was released by EAD Master. CyberWarriorX and SamIM make a beef over it. Outstanding questions. Who licensed the code? So, like I said, I've been assuming it's Polymega, and it was likely them, but it could have been someone else. Translation work was completed in 2014. What has SamIM been doing this whole time? So that's another big mystery. Like apparently the translation was done back in 2014, like pretty soon after it started. So I don't know exactly what SamIM has been doing because he's not a coder. And finally, does SamIM work for Polymega? That I don't know. Obviously, he has been, kind of, gaslighting everyone for CyberWarriorX. All the people that were on that website, Citations Shiro, they were gaslighting everyone too, and it wasn't right. All right, well, that's what's really going on. Um, hope that just explains things because I can't stand when people lie. I can't stand when people try to gaslight people. You know, it's not right. It's not right what these two guys did because people have been waiting for over a decade for this fan translation. People were not unsympathetic. They tried to contact these guys to help out when it was unclear, whether the project would be completed. But by that time, they had made this deal, and so they weren't looking for any help at that point. And just their behavior throughout this whole thing. We could have had the fan translation of this years ago. And suffice to say, I'm extremely disappointed in these two. I actually did respect them, and I appreciate the work that they did do because they were at least initially doing it for free. Obviously now they're not, and they lied about it, and that wasn't right. All right, guys, that's all I got to say. Hope that answers some questions about the controversy surrounding the English translation of Princess Crown.